What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero.
First of all, happy Pi Day. It's 3/14, and for all you science tech geeks, everybody says, oh, it's Pi Day, and so forth and so on with all of that stuff here. Quick little program note, tomorrow in our third hour, we're going to have Joe Moulton. He's the CEO of Guns 80. They used to be an advertiser on my website and on RBN, and apparently they have been played foul by NBC news, and so we're going to be talking about that, a little bit of pushing the gun grabber agenda. And I guess before we get any further in the show, let's go ahead and get into the news here. Now then, a former CIA officer, Michael Schur, has gone public saying that yes, there is no question, Obama did bug Donald Trump, saying that Obama was behind the FISA warrant on Trump, and the FISA warrant was based on a fake website that was set up by one of the Never-Trumpers and used to artificially create a chain of evidence to frame Donald Trump to get the FISA court to go along with the warrant against him. But even more damaging is the revelation. 3 intelligence sources have now confirmed to Fox News that President Obama was spying on the Trump campaign using outside contractors. Apparently he used GCHQ, this is coming from Judge Napolitano, GCHQ, and a British intelligence and security organization, and they have 24/7 instant access to the NSA database. Remember that NSA database that captures everything that we're doing and has been made available without any filtering to other governments around the world, including Great Britain and Israel. And apparently Obama, according to this report, was using the NSA data collected on Donald Trump, sent to Great Britain, then filtered and sent back to him to try and find damaging information to give to the Hillary Clinton campaign to win the election. And despite all the skullduggery, she still lost and will continue to lose. And apparently Donald Trump's investigators have asked for a little more time before they present all of their evidence about the wiretapping to congressional investigators. The new deadline is the 20th of this month, and they're pulling it all together. And of course, John McCain and the other deep staters are trying to find out just what Trump has so they can go on out and bury data and, if necessary, bury witnesses to keep the lid on all of this stuff. But basically, Senator Rand Paul on Sunday's Face the Nation was saying, yes, the NSA routinely monitors Americans' communications without warrants. That's certainly what Edward Snowden put on out there, and that includes our politicians, our leaders, everybody. Everybody's being spied on by the NSA, and anybody with access to that data wields tremendous unelected, unaccountable power over our lives, and that is unacceptable. Now, the corporate media is flip-flopping all over the place trying to save face on all of this issue. Back in 2012, the corporate media was actually running a story on how the CIA planned to spy on us through Internet-connected dishwashers to find out when we washed our dishes and possibly even what was on the dishes being washed. Now, of course, the corporate media is saying, oh, it's impossible to spy on people through TV sets, and really, you should just forget about all that nonsense here. Now, over at HBO, John Oliver did 4 straight minutes defending the CIA from the WikiLeaks allegations and ended with this very flippant comment that if you don't like being spied on by your TV set, you can just unplug it. Well, certainly we're unplugging John Oliver's show. I actually did that a long time ago with his very obvious liberal bias. But it doesn't matter anymore if people are unplugging their TVs or not. The real criminals, the real terrorists, the people who know they've got things to hide, know not to be doing things in front of their TV or other appliances. Now, of course, we have all these people in the intelligence community coming on out trying to reassure us all that our constitutional right to privacy is still being protected. But remember, spying is lying. That's a big part of the business. Spies lie. That's what they do. And remember, one of the big revelations coming out of the WikiLeaks dump was the CIA's using other nations' hacking tools in order to break in computers and lay a false trail to frame an innocent third party. It's all deception. Spies always tell lies. A day without lying is a day without joy in the eye of a spy. So that's what's going on. A little more sober comment coming out of an article that appeared in Judge Napolitano's own website. Congress created a monster. And they're going back and talking about how the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act was passed by Congress in the aftermath of Richard Nixon's use of the CIA and FBI to spy on his political opponents. Well, the problem is that court didn't offer any protections. It rubber stamps everything. It is very, very rare for them to refuse a request for a warrant. They did refuse Obama's first warrant on Trump because Trump's name was actually in it. The second warrant, they took Trump's name out and they loaded it up with that false trail of evidence created with the phony website, and that's why they got the warrant. But it is out of control. And again, that Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, look at that first word, foreign. Its warrants are valid only outside the United States of America. Inside the United States of America, all American citizens and legal residents are protected by that Bill of Rights. And it's out of control, and it's being used for nefarious purposes. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Dee Dee in Honolulu, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Dee Dee, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay. First-time caller and a new listener to your show, and I like your show very much. I used to be an avid listener of Alex Jones. I still listen to him, but I love your show.
Well, mahalo for that.
I'm calling because I'm very concerned about this latest move in Hawaii to make it a sanctuary state. I'm wondering what these people are thinking when we have the worst roads in the nation, according to a poll I heard of. We have a rail that is billions of dollars in excess of what we need. We have a homeless situation that does not look as though any progress is being made with, and yet they want us to become a sanctuary state. And I find it very fascinating that Obama has just made a surprise visit here. So between the case that we are now in action with against Trump's latest immigration move, and then now we want to become a sanctuary state with our resources highly threatened. What is going on here?
Well,
and how do we address this?
This is a classic case of political ideology overcoming practical reality. Now, the good news is, as of right now, Hawaii only has 7 refugees in the state. Hawaii talks big about open borders, but so far only 7 refugees have actually shown up here. But this is all about pushing the globalist agenda. It's all about the liberals pushing back against Donald Trump's unexpected election victory last November. And the hard reality is that every one of these people talking about sanctuary state and defying federal immigration authority, they are in violation of Title VIII. They should be arrested and put in jail. Because the law of the land is, if you are protecting and harboring illegal immigrants of any kind, that's a crime. And you can go to jail for up to 5 years for that. Now, if you're profiting from it, it goes up to 10. Now, you're absolutely right about the homeless situation. Claire and I are involved in 2 separate programs of trying to provide money to feed hungry children in families where the food stamp money runs out in week number 3 of every single month, and we're involved in another program that's just feeding the hungry and the homeless. It is a major problem, and it doesn't show any signs of going away. And you're absolutely right.
Or getting better.
Yeah, it's not even getting better. We had to recently sort of increase what we're chipping in here because they're coming up short between that and the rising food prices. And you're absolutely right. Every place that's taken in illegal immigrants and refugees, it is a huge economic strain. We're seeing it all across Europe. It makes absolutely no sense in terms of what is best for Hawaii and the Hawaiian people. But again, this is all about political ideology, and the actual real-world effects of it are just not even being considered at all at this point.
But we're trapped in this totally Democratic-controlled state, and what can we do, the local population, in response to this travesty?
Well, again, I'm not sure how strong Democratic control over the state is. We've had our own problems with election fraud allegations going back to Cayetano. So I think what everybody in every state needs to be working on right now is demanding not just a promise of election system reform, but an actual delivery on the goods. We were promised election reform after that Florida 2000 debacle. We've been promised election reform following last year's disaster. Now's the time for the American people to say, we demand honest elections. Because certainly around here, what I was finding going around the election is I found the people I talked to were almost evenly split between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and yet the official election results from Hawaii were heavily in favor of Hillary. And we now know that investigators, despite obstruction by the federal government, investigators in states are finding all of these instances of election fraud, all of it favoring Hillary Clinton. So the first thing we have to do is actually get our people back in control of who sits in government. And we're not going to be able to accomplish anything else until we do that. Frankly, I think the people of Hawaii who are opposed to defying United States Title VIII law need to stand up and say, we have to have Hawaii taking care of the people of Hawaii. Our state is in serious shape. You're right about the roads, and it's not, you don't even have to need to do a poll. The Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Transportation has rated Hawaii's roads the absolute worst in the country. Somebody over at UH ran an analysis and calculated that the Hawaii driver on average spends $700 a year repairing damage caused by the poor quality roads. And by the way, driving along the line for the light rail system, it's just potholes and rebar sticking up, and it's just a horrible mess down there. And again, looking at where those train stations are going to be located, it's tourist centers and shopping malls. That light rail system is really not designed to help ordinary Hawaiian individuals get around. It's all about connecting tourism centers and trying to draw some of the heavy business congestion out of Honolulu out toward Kapolei. And that's basically what it's been designed to do. But you're absolutely right. We've got a huge homeless problem here. Our tourism has been in decline ever since TSA started groping people. And our state government is so caught up in the liberal ideology, they're just oblivious to what's going on down here among ordinary people. And that cannot be allowed to stand any longer. People need to stand up. They need to shout. They need to complain. They need to talk with their friends and neighbors. And we need to start really expressing our discontent to our local government that it's time for them to stop thinking in terms of the liberal New World Order ideology and start taking care of Hawaii, or we, the people of Hawaii, are going to sacrifice them to Madame Pele.
But we do not have at this point any structure to bring those of us who are understanding this New World Order agenda to really bring us together as a force, a kind of a group, energy or something, so that we can express. But the last thing is, I really would like to know what you and Claire are doing to feed homeless children, because I'm very interested in that. So is there any way for me to find out about that program that you're invested in? Because if you're invested in it, I know it's a good program. Yeah,
actually you can, but I'm going to ask you to contact me through the email. I don't want to give out the names of these programs because when we did that before, they got, well, it's WRH, Whiskey Romeo Hotel, at whatreallyhappened.com, and just in the subject line put Dee Dee from Honolulu, and we will send you the information where you can contact the sponsoring organizations for these various programs and either lend a hand. I got to tell you, it's a real experience to go down there and actually take part in the food distribution. That for a lot of people is their
children.
Yeah, that for a lot of people is their Buddha on the road moment.
Exactly. Listen, I thank you for all that you do, and I support you totally.
Well, thank you very much, and help spread the word about this. And as far as organizing a group to stand up to some of this nonsense, hey, if you've got lots of free time.
Sanctuary states.
Yes.
Well,
that's your assignment. That's your homework assignment for this next week, is to organize a structure for the Hawaii people to express their concerns over sanctuary state status.
But Mike, what I would like is to, do I go online to find out exactly what the requirements are, what is it expected in a sanctuary state, how we differ? Because I will never forget that San Francisco sanctuary city incident where the man is walking with his daughter just down the road, very peacefully, and she's shot by this illegal immigrant who had a past history of violence and for whatever reason had been let go 3 times and remained in California. Well, I find that very challenging. You
can go on an unbiased search engine like DuckDuckGo or Yandex, and you can find all those stories and collect them together. If you want, you can set up your own website through GoDaddy
just put in, do I just put in sanctuary city rules or
sanctuary city? Well, the rules differ from location to location because there is no legal basis for a sanctuary city. It's just a description that sounds really wonderful, but it basically comes down to governors and mayors saying, we refuse to cooperate with the federal immigration customs enforcement. And that's a Title VIII violation right there. So that's your, there really is no formal definition of a sanctuary state because every single state, every single city is doing it in a somewhat different way. They simply tell the police, ignore the federal authorities, and there's a lot of friction caused by this. Anyway, listen, Dee Dee, I'm going to have to let you go. We're running another phone call here.
Thank you very much.
Mahalo, and email me, and I'll get you that information about these Feed the Hungry programs. All right, we're going to switch over to Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Can you hold me over if the ad comes?
Yeah, we got about 2 minutes. Go for it.
Okay, thanks. That was a really nice lady. I tell you, I know you don't like to spend too much time on calls, but some of your callers are really decent people. You know, Tom from Florida is really a character. But and also, I'd like to hear from Errol in the Netherlands, what he thinks is going to happen tomorrow in the election. So, Errol, if you're listening, we need your expert analysis. Mike, have you heard anything from, I haven't seen anything coming out of the mouth of Tulsi Gabbard on this Hawaii's position on Trump's travel ban?
You know, I haven't either. Right now, Tulsi is working very hard with Rand Paul on her Stop Funding Terrorists bill.
Yes.
You know something? I'll make a point of contacting Tulsi's office and see where she stands on this. I have a feeling she's probably not all that cool about it. Again, it's a purely political, theoretical exercise because in the case of Hawaii, we only have 7 refugees here. Now, we do have a lot of illegal immigrants, and that's a separate category. But I'll try and find out. I haven't heard from Tulsi, but I'm expecting that she's probably going to be very cool on this idea. For the very reasons that Dee Dee mentioned. Our state is in serious economic trouble. They're being bankrupted by the collapse in tourism. They're being bankrupted by the cost overruns on the light rail system. We've got a gigantic homeless problem, and it can't go away. It's not like these people can walk to another state because we're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And, in fact, there was even a big stink some years ago where some small towns on the mainland that only had maybe 3 or 4 homeless all bought them one-way plane tickets to Hawaii to send them out here, figuring that Hawaii's a democratic state, they'll just feed and take care of them. And so a lot of our homeless are from out of state. A lot of our homeless are people who were lured here to Hawaii with promises of a job, and then all of a sudden they get here, and the downturn in the economy, they lose the job, or the company they're working for has to close their doors, and they don't have enough money to get back to the mainland, and that can be a real tragedy. All right, so, Bob, stay on the line. I am going to bring you back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Bob in Las Vegas. And, Bob, what else did you want to talk about?
Yeah, Mike, you know Jack Lord, I'm a big Hawaii Five-0 fan, the original.
Yes.
He was very fond of Hawaii. I would wonder what he would think about Hawaii in the state it's in today. You mentioned the illegals. Where are these illegals coming from?
Can I insert something there here? Because a lot of the stars that are in productions here in Hawaii tend to decide to stay here. Jack Lord, after Hawaii Five-0 was over, he stayed here. Used to hang around Waikiki waiting to be recognized with his absolutely epoxied perfect hair in place. It was hurricane-proof.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who worked on Lost are still here on the island. And it is a very, very beautiful place to be. But I can't speak for Jack Lord because I only ever saw him once shortly before he passed away. But certainly for my people, my friends within the production environment who've stayed here, overall, we all recognize Hawaii is not the place it used to be. Claire and I have been here for almost 20 years now, and even, never mind the decay of the roads and the decay of tourism and everything, the spirit of the people has been crushed down. When we came on out here, there really was a sense of the aloha state among the indigenous people, where they would stop and help you if you were in trouble. They'd loan you something. They'd say, "Here, take this," and really a strong sense of community and family. That is unfortunately rapidly eroding away under the economic pressure, the influx of the illegals, the skyrocketing drug and crime. And it is very, very painful to watch, and it is obviously a smaller scale version of what we're seeing happen all across the United States right now.
Where are the illegals coming from? Because that's a long swim from Mexico.
Some of them are coming from Central and South America. We also have an illegal problem coming in from Asia.
Wow. Okay. And then lastly, Mike, I heard Paul Craig Roberts with your buddy Richie Allen. He's very pessimistic. He feels like Trump has been captured on this on the Russia-U.S. relations, and the Russophobic people around him have basically taken over the policy. And as you said, Trump is in many ways distracted by this whole draining the swamp and all the attacks he's been receiving from the media, that he doesn't really have time to deal with foreign policy.
Well, apparently Julian Assange gave an interview to Alex Jones, and apparently what's coming out of there is that Barack Obama, from his bunker there in Washington, D.C., is masterminding a plot to get Trump kicked out of the White House and put in Mike Pence, who's going to be much more amenable to the existing elite establishment than Donald Trump. So they're getting ready to send a message saying, you know, we'll tell you you live in a democracy and you have freedom, but the reality is, no, we will pick our leaders ourselves, and your job is to sit there and give us your money, your obedience, and your children, and just otherwise shut the heck up, because you're just Eloi, and we are the Morlocks, and we are in charge.
Yeah, I know there was a headline that Paul Ryan allegedly said something in October that he's never going to defend Trump. I don't know if you saw that story, but I mean, I always knew Paul Ryan was a sneaky SOB.
Yeah, well, but again, the thing we have to be looking at behind all of these people is all of them have been surveilled by the National Security Agency, the NSA, and presumably CIA, and all these foreign governments have got all the dirt on these people, and that makes them controllable. If, in fact, this pedophile scandal is as widespread as some of the indications seem to be, then all of these people are completely compromised, and they're going to do whatever they're told to do, no matter how horrible it is, in order to keep their secrets from being made public.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to, actually, no, we're not. We're going to put these next two phone calls off until after the next break here. The New York Times has finally been forced to admit that law enforcement officials are saying none of the investigations into this supposed link between Trump and Russia have found anything at all. There is no there. It's a big nothing burger that was being pushed by the establishment elite, by the liberals, by the corporate media, and because of the backlash on this from the independent media, even the New York Slimes is out there saying, well, yeah, I guess there's nothing there. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and I need to scroll back up and see who my next caller is. So just give me a sec. Oh, here we go. We're talking with Rick in Fort Lauderdale. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. It might be the happiest day of my life. I'm reading, and I don't know if this is true. The White House seeks to cut billions of dollars in funding to the United Nations.
Yeah, well, I think that would probably be a very good thing, because the United States is one of the larger funders of the United Nations, and I think everybody ought to be paying the same thing. But the United States likes to control the United Nations. That's why they've been giving them so much money and why the UN headquarters are located in New York.
Well, it was coming out of foreignpolicy.com where I was finding it. It said something to the effect about cutting in half and that we give $10 billion a year. So that would be absolutely amazing if we could keep some of that money for our infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if since most of what the U.S. does at the United Nations is justify wars and protect Israel, we ought to let Israel pay our membership fee.
Oh, they have all our money. Why not?
Yeah, true, true. They got it. They can afford it.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mark in the Netherlands. Mark, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say that here in the Netherlands, we're on the evening before the election, and it looks like the poll numbers are being fixed up again, faked out, making it look like all four parties, the four leading parties, are equal. And a second thing I read today is that the Dutch Aiea, which is the NSA of Holland, will continue to share data with all of their third-party partners, including the United States.
Yeah, it's just one big spy network all over the globe here.
It really is, and it's somewhat disappointing to see that an election with 18 parties that are participating tomorrow, again, is being taken over by what it looks like are globalists.
Well, the globalists right now are afraid of Geert Wilders. They're afraid of Marine Le Pen. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to stop Marine Le Pen because her main competition is just collapsing. He's now officially under investigation for giving his wife that phony job that she never actually had to do anything, and she was getting all this taxpayer money. So that appears to be over and done with. As far as Geert Wilders, we would all love to see him win. Another Eurosceptic come on in. But the globalists are in a panic. They have been spending trillions of dollars and working for decades trying to push the world toward a single global government and a single global private central bank, and they're so close to achieving their goal they can taste it, and now they're desperate. It's starting to slip from their fingers, and they're in an absolute panic, and there is nothing, emphasis on nothing, they will not do to try and reverse the trend and regain control of the world.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think that in 24 hours we're going to know if that Wilders is going to be number one. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make because all of the other parties have said they're not going to work with him here in the Netherlands. But with all of the media here, all of the international media, it would certainly be a big blow to the globalists if he won the election tomorrow. And I'm really holding on to my hat that in 24 hours I'm going to be jumping up and down saying, we did it.
Well, I remember when Trump won, going into our election last November, and the corporate media was saying Hillary's going to win in a landslide, Trump doesn't have a chance. And then we're watching the actual election numbers, and Hillary started out ahead because of the Eastern Seaboard liberals, and then as the day wore on, it became obvious that there was no landslide, and then finally it turned around for Trump. And I remember going in and waking up Claire, and I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning, and I shook her awake and said, Trump did it. And we had a little party right then and there. So we may see the same thing in the Netherlands because we know the elections are being rigged, but we know that if an entire people unite together, they can overcome election fraud, even on such a massive scale as we saw here in the United States of America. And so to everybody in the Netherlands who is listening to my show, please make a point of getting on out there and voting, if for no other reason that somebody else doesn't vote using your name.
Hey, well, listen, that's about all I had to say, and thanks for your show. I really appreciate it, and my wife and I really enjoy listening to you in the evening here.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words here, and good luck tomorrow in the Netherlands. We're all watching. Tomorrow's going to be a heck of a day between your elections, the debt ceiling, a bunch of other stuff is happening. Beware the Ides of March, Caesar. And so it's going to be an interesting time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Wes in Idaho. Aloha, Wes. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Have you done any coverage on Amazon banning the sale of hoax books as well as other authors, anyone that criticizes Jews. Tex Mars in particular, I don't know if you'd like him, but he's written some really hard books on religion, on the Jews, and I thought you would want to be talking about this issue.
We did talk about it. We talked about it, I think, last week when Amazon first announced it. And I think what's going to happen to Amazon is they're simply going to lose sales. They're literally going to be losing some sales over this issue. And, of course, Amazon's public image now is one of the 21st century equivalent of book burning. And all it really does, when Israel goes on out and says, ban this, ban that, criminalize this, it just makes it more and more obvious some great dark secret is being hidden. Because if you go on out and tell people that you saw Bigfoot, they'll chuckle at you, and that's it. You don't lose your job. If you go on out and claim you saw a flying saucer with space aliens in it, you don't get thrown in prison. Only in this one area of asking questions about the Orthodox story of World War II are you subject to blacklisting, career-wrecking, and imprisonment for daring to ask a question. Could it be any more obvious that some big secret is being protected by this behavior?
Okay, you might want to interview some of these authors that have been banned, like Mike King in particular. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We've had some of these authors of these works on the show in the past, and time willing, we'll get some more of them back on. Obviously, right now is a very busy time geopolitically. All right, we're going to go back and get some news done here. We're going to close the phone lines except for people from the Netherlands calling in about what's going on with Geert Wilders until I can get caught up in the news. Now then, we just posted an article. This is from Zero Hedge, and it is another confirmation that Julian Assange is claiming that Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and the intelligence community are basically pushing for Donald Trump to somehow be removed from the White House and for Mike Pence to be given the presidency on the theory that Mike Pence is much more controllable. He will not upset the elite establishment. He'll go on borrowing huge amounts of money, spending it on the government, and forcing your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren to pick up the tab on that. And so this is starting to stir all over the place. How are they going to get rid of Donald Trump? Well, they've talked about impeachment. That's not getting any traction in a GOP-controlled Congress. They're talking about trying to somehow claim he's mentally incompetent and remove him in the 25th Amendment. And if that doesn't work, we know they'll probably try the John F. Kennedy approach or the Robert F. Kennedy approach, depending upon your age. So, let's see. Another story coming out of TruePundit.com. The FBI's own political terror plot. The deputy director and FBI brass secretly conspired to wage a coup against Michael Flynn and Donald Trump. Everyone was saying, where did this information that led to Michael Flynn's having to step down from the Trump administration, where did it come from? And according to this story, it's looking like the FBI itself is involved in leaking this out. We have a president that is hated by the entire establishment. The Democrats hate him. A lot of the Republicans hate him. The military-industrial complex hates him. Big Pharmaceutical hates him. And they are out to get rid of him, shove the American people back down into our dark little box, and go on selling us bad products and taking our money and waging war across the globe. Because it's fun for them. They think it's great. The system's working wonderfully for them. They don't care what ordinary people are having to deal with. Money junkies never do. Now, remember when Obama said he was going to have the most transparent administration in history? Well, as it turns out, during Obama's last year in office, his administration spent $36 million in legal fees to oppose Freedom of Information Act lawsuits seeking transparent information about what was going on inside the government. So that's how transparent they really were. Now, getting on back to former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Boy, she's ready to join the Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi Old Ladies Club. She posted a video in which she came on out telling people it's time to protest the time to protest is nigh, and it might be time to bleed and die for the cause. Doesn't actually say what the cause is, but she's out there rousing the rabble against the presidency. So, let us all open our textbooks to Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 2383. Whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So, Loretta Lynch has just kissed off any possibility of ever holding any government office ever again. Were she to be prosecuted? And she ought to be. Now, I'm in a position of not agreeing with a lot of what Donald Trump is doing. And I think he has been imprisoned metaphorically and hijacked. And because he's so busy dealing with draining the swamp, that a lot of foreign policy is being set by the foreign policy establishment and not by Donald Trump. He's just going along with it because he doesn't have time to look at it. But be that as it may, he won the election. And everybody who's out there trying to get rid of him is basically a traitor to the country. Now, I've been critical of the government of the United States of America. I've certainly been critical of the Bush-Clinton drug gun-running duocracy and the CIA for a great many years. We just had our 23rd birthday a few days ago for WhatReallyHappened.com, or what became WhatReallyHappened.com. But I do not advocate violent rebellion, because if it's one thing this government knows how to do, it's kill people. What I've been saying all along, and I'm still of this opinion, this government is headed the same way as the former Soviet Union. It's going to tear itself apart. And I continue to counsel patience and suffrage, and it will come down. They can't keep going the way they're going. And all these people trying to get rid of Donald Trump so they can keep the system going the way it's going now are actually bringing about the end of that same system. And they don't realize it. Because of their money addiction, their power addiction, they're oblivious to anything happening around them, anything outside. They're oblivious to what's happening next week. It's just like a druggie who's got to get his fix tonight. They're not thinking what's going to be the consequence a week or a month or a year into the future. It's just all about now, getting that fix now. And that's why it's so dangerous. Another story coming out of, well, it's a YouTube video. Obama has an army and a secret office to overthrow Trump. It's not much of a secret. Everybody pretty much knows it. Now, the good news is Democratic leaders are beginning to turn on Obama and his secret shadow government. They're even calling Obama's shadow government the devil. And it may be because the Democrats are realizing that all of the antics of Obama and Hillary and Loretta Lynch and all the rest of them, all of this tantrum and whining and crying, it's making the entire Democratic Party look very, very bad. We even ran a poll on our website earlier today. Is the Hillary-Obama continuing tantrum making the entire Democratic Party look bad? 98% said yes, only 2% said no. The other issue is that Democrats, as well as some Republicans, are probably realizing that an attempt to force Donald Trump from office could, in fact, trigger the final collapse of the entire federal government. And that's a reason to sort of pull back and say, yeah, he did win the election. Despite all the pro-Hillary fraud and all the pro-Hillary propaganda in the corporate media, the American people voted for Donald Trump. We might be well advised to just sort of get used to that idea and move forward. Meghan McCain is out there saying Obama is the most bitter ex-president this nation has ever had. And certainly we've been seeing that. He is broken with past tradition where departing presidents basically retire into private life and they stay quiet for at least a year before they speak publicly about their successor. Not Obama. He went on the attack the day he had to turn in his parking pass at the White House. They could easily provoke a civil war. I would not want to see that happen. the establishment against the people. That's the Civil War. Obviously, I'm on the side of the people. I presume you all are as well. Now, turning to foreign politics, Germany's Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel has absolutely yanked the rug out from Angela Merkel, where she has been screaming for months now about Russian interference in Germany's elections. And the German foreign minister is saying, no, that's a fantasy. Just like the New York Slimes has admitted that was a fantasy here in the United States. It's all just propaganda. It's Russia bashing. It's whining. Now, as I mentioned a little earlier in the show, the French presidential candidate, Francois Fillon, is formally placed under investigation over his giving his wife a supposed government job that did not require her to actually do anything or even to show up, for which she got a very hefty taxpayer-funded salary. And as a result, Fillon's poll numbers are collapsing. People are distancing themselves from him. He's basically a done deal. And all he can do is run around saying, but Marine Le Pen posted pictures of children killed by war on social media. That's illegal under French law. She needs to be in jail. Go after her. Don't go after me. Not going to work. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Let's talk about election fraud. And it is something that is going to have to be dealt with by Donald Trump, by the American people, before the 2018 midterm elections, or we will have a totally Democratic Congress and Donald Trump will be paralyzed. That's how important it is. And again, I want to refresh everybody about the timeline over the vote fraud issue last October in response to Donald Trump's suggestion that our election system may not be 100% honest. President Barack Obama got up there in October and said, nobody can rig America's elections. They're spread out too much. It's absolutely impossible to do. And then, of course, November came and went. Donald Trump won, and Jill Stein's out there screaming, we have to have recounts in these states that Donald Trump won by a narrow margin because we're suspecting election fraud. And that one kind of backfired because the recounts actually increased Trump's margin and uncovered pro-Hillary election fraud. Then we had Hillary come on out and say Russia was hacking the election. And today, every time somebody says we want to actually investigate last year's election for fraud, we get people from the NAACP out there screaming, don't you dare look at the elections, don't you dare investigate, you're being racist, you're being exclusion, you're being terrible people, but even to look for the election fraud. Okay, over in Ohio, Rebecca A. Hammonds has been sentenced to just 6 months in prison for 14 counts of voter fraud, and that was trimmed down from the original charge of 35 counts. And she was a paid Ohio organizing collaborative canvasser, a liberal Democrat, and she was faking voter registration forms. And thankfully, somebody was paying attention and double-checking those voter registration forms and found out the names didn't line up with the addresses or the phone numbers. In a lot of cases, the people were just dead. Yes, there was massive election fraud. Yes, it favored Hillary Clinton. Yes, we, the American people, working together, were able to overcome it. But it's an absolute guarantee that those whose business is the rigging of elections are working on improving their skills, making them more potent, more difficult to detect for the 2018 midterm elections, in order to put a Democratic majority into the House and the Senate, at which point Donald Trump could be impeached and Mike Pence put in. This is an issue that has to be dealt with. This is the issue that has to be dealt with first before any other changes are possible, peacefully. We, the American people, need to regain control over that very simple decision, who gets those offices of power. And we have to regain our right to choose our own leaders and not have them chosen by Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, by Israel. That's how important it is. As we get further into the summer, We're going to really start cranking up on a huge campaign to enrage the American people, make them face up to the fact our election system is so crooked they have to screw the ballots into the ballot box, and unite everybody to demand real election reform, not just more empty promises. Got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Here, we just put up an article on whatreallyhappened.com. Canadian journalist Eva Bartlett exposes mainstream media outlets for reporting falsehoods, misinformation in their stories. And this idea that corporate media is compromised by intelligence agencies is not unique to the United States of America. Every country is doing it. Every country is propagandizing their people to keep them under control by the elites. Now, Americans are the most lied to people on the face of the earth, and pretty much around the world. Ordinary people, working class, middle class, are as deluded about the true nature of their rulers as the medieval peasants were. And it is by design. Now, getting on to the corporate media, Jesse James, the founder of West Coast Choppers, and yes, he's a descendant of the original Jesse James, was on the Alex Jones show, basically saying that corporate media is a false sense of reality. And yes, it is. I think one of the reasons for the success of the Matrix movie franchise is that people understood at some level that it was a metaphor for the life we are living today. Very few of us go on out and actually interact with the real world. 99% of what we think the world is coming to us through these screens that we have around us, over that radio in the car, and on the newspapers. We're very much deaf, dumb, and blind to what's really out there if all of that corporate media is telling us something that is not true. We are living in a real-life version of the Matrix. And we need to be taking those red pills just as fast as we can get them. Another article on that exact same topic at Activist Post. The American corporate media merged with the CIA and has been since the 1950s, and they're once again talking about Operation Mockingbird, where after the end of World War II, American intelligence agencies studied the methods of the Gestapo and the SS and Goering's propaganda machine and said, wow, they did really good things. We need to copy what they were doing there the same way we're copying their missile and weapons technology. In a very real way, the Fourth Reich is alive and well in the United States of America, to judge by the methods being used. Marine Le Pen has come on out and basically a left-handed compliment to the independent media, saying that fake news on the web could never be worse than the fake news that's in the corporate media, the newspapers. And she, like Donald Trump, is getting a very hard lesson in how the corporate media lies to hijack who gets to be a ruler and who does not. Okay, we're going to take one phone call here. Errol in the Netherlands is checking in. Errol, what's going on in the run-up to the election?
Yeah, hello, aloha, Mike. Yeah, what's going on in the election? Well, I saw the conversation between Mark Rutte and Geert Wilders. So, what I'm going to vote, I just called in to say tomorrow I'm going to vote for the Pirate Party. Really? I'm going to vote for the Pirate Party. Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
All right, well, thank you very much. Have a good day, and good luck voting and everything.
Okay.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Very short phone call there. All righty, now then, getting on back to the corporate media, they are becoming ever more adversarial against not just Donald Trump, not just against the American people, trying to reassert that control, regain that monopolistic control over the information in your head. They're starting to get hostile to smaller media and certainly to independent media, and the White House press corps are now all in a lather that the established corporate media stars who get those front row seats in the briefing room are being bypassed by the floaters coming in the back. The conservative media is getting the attention. And they see that as a threat. How dare you talk to anybody but us? We are the gateway through which your words to the American people and the world shall be filtered. Mahi dictum est. So they're definitely getting rather emotionally triggered. These poor little snowflake corporate media people, they're having to need their Play-Doh because they're not getting the majority of attention from the White House. Now, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is heading for a trip to Asia and has decided that maybe he doesn't need to have the press along with him on this trip. And the press are very upset. Who wouldn't want a free trip to Asia after all? But CNN anchor Jake Tapper is saying it's unusual and it's insulting. Well, what is Rex Tillerson going to accomplish bringing the corporate media with him? It's going to be more opportunities to spin what's happening to suit the anti-Trump agenda. I think it's very reasonable for Rex Tillerson to do this. Very reasonable entirely. All right, we're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, yesterday we were talking about this list of fake news websites that was being promoted by Harvard University. Harvard, that bastion of establishment education elite, and they have a list of fake news websites, and I cannot tell you how proud I am that whatreallyhappened.com is on that list. Well, I thought maybe I'd actually gotten into Harvard, and it turns out no. Like the Washington Post list of websites that are arms of Russian propaganda, it turns out that the source for this list is not Harvard University itself, but it actually came from an assistant professor over at Merrimack College in Massachusetts. Her name is Melissa Zimdars, Mish for short. She's an assistant professor, and her specialty in teaching is social justice. She is a hardcore liberal Democrat. She's a zealot for Hillary Clinton. And apparently she started working on this list of fake news websites right after Hillary Clinton lost the election. And it basically consists of conservative and independent websites. No liberal websites are on the list. Oh, the liberal websites, they're all real. You can trust them. Don't you dare read whatreallyhappened.com. Frogs will come in your window at night and nibble on your fingers if you read whatreallyhappened.com. They won't. The frogs are on my side. Just thought I'd share that with you. Now, there's still a big scandal hovering over the Obama administration. Actually, a couple of them. More than a couple. Quite a large number of them, really. But House Republicans are calling for an investigation into your tax dollars being funneled through the U.S. Agency for International Development program to foundations controlled by George Soros. Remember I said the other day, it just seems amazing. He never seems to run out of money to go on in and muck about with other people's countries, including our own. And as it turns out, he's not using his own money. He's using your money. George Soros, by way of Barack Obama, is using your money to try and bring about a color revolution in this country and take away your constitutional republic. Such a deal. All this evil work, and he doesn't even have to write the checks himself. That's amazing here. Now, this is coming out of Judicial Watch, and they're basically pushing for this investigation. And a lot of this goes back to this U.S. Agency for International Development. It's called USAID for short, and it is a known troublemaker. They were in Ukraine before that coup d'etat. Russia has kicked them out, along with all the other George Soros organizations. Other European nations that have been having rising problems with instability are starting to look at USAID and say, you get out. You're not supposed to be here. Because as it turns out, the U.S. Agency for International Development isn't really doing a lot of international development. They go on into countries and say, we're here to develop you, and what they do is they fund opposition groups, and they kick up chaos and instability. That's what they do. They're the opening salvo in the covert overthrow of other people's countries. Now, let's talk about the war zones A lot of interesting stuff going on over there. Apparently there is an anti-ISIS operation ongoing in the Palmyra countryside. The Syrian army and the National Defense Forces, backed by the Russian aviation forces, have re-seized the power station located south of Palmyra. And so now they have been able to restore reliable electric power to the Syrian people in that area. And they're now firmly in control. They're not expecting an ISIS counterattack. Now, a lot of people are looking askance at Donald Trump because he's poured in a lot of men and resources into Syria. Or, let's possibly be a touch more accurate, a lot of resources are being poured into Syria by the Pentagon, supposedly on behalf of Donald Trump. And again, we cannot rule out the possibility that Trump is being kept so busy with all of the alligators in the swamp he's trying to drain that he's allowing too many foreign policy decisions to be made for him by the hardcore neocons who've infiltrated his White House. But first of all, we have Bashar al-Assad saying that, again, the U.S. forces are not actually targeting ISIS and al-Qaeda. They are bombing the Syrian army positions. They're bombing Syrian infrastructure. They are trying to impede the Syrian government from recapturing territories held by these terrorist groups. Trump does not have a congressional authorization or a declaration of war, and he does not have a UN resolution. This invasion of Syria is illegal under international and United States law. 3 different separate ways, 3 strikes, and you are out. And people are now predicting that it's going to fail. The U.S. is still going to lose this one no matter how much they pour on in there, because everybody understands this is simple, naked, unprovoked U.S. aggression. The United States has lost the ability to claim we're going in to get the weapons of mass destruction. We're going in to save the people from a cruel tyrant. We're going in because it's a humanitarian crisis and we must save those people. Nobody buys that anymore from the U.S. government and the corporate media. This is greed run rampant. This is a bankrupted nation trying to save itself with other people's wealth. That's what it is. And maybe Trump is going along with it. Maybe somebody sat him down and said, if we don't conquer all these nations and force them to go back to borrowing the U.S. dollar for commerce at interest, our economy is going to collapse. And Trump, as a businessman, would look at the numbers and say, yeah, I see your point. Trump's top priority is what he perceives to be best for the nation as a whole. And the collapse of the nation is not going to be good for a lot of people. So he may be trying to hold that off. I don't agree with the methodology, but I could agree with the agenda. But we now have 5,000 U.S. troops are now back in Iraq to prop up the U.S. puppet rulers in Iraq that have been propped up all along by American bayonets. And that puppet regime is not in full control of all of Iraq. Same thing in Afghanistan. Kabul is only controlling 60-65% of that country. Mostly the oil pipeline right-of-way and all that opium. Now, the U.S. proxy, Saudi Arabia, is getting ready to launch an assault on Yemen's biggest port city, Al-Hudaydah. And Russia is pointing out that this is only going to make the humanitarian situation in Yemen much, much worse. There's already a blockade. Food and humanitarian aid cannot get into Yemen. And of course, from the pentagram's point of view, that's the whole point. Starve all the Yemenis to death, and then they get Socotra Island, on which they're building that new giant U.S. naval base to project power all along the Gulf and into the Indian Ocean. Now, the wild card in all of this, all of a sudden, is Turkey. Turkey was sort of going along with the U.S. with the agenda in Syria, and now all of a sudden Turkey is breaking on out. They're going against the Kurds. That's alienating both the United States and Russia. Erdogan is just on his own agenda right now. And Erdogan is saying that he wants to annex northern Syria and Iraq. He's on the warpath out there. And that's going to destabilize an already unstable situation there. As a result of this recent going off the script, U.S. support for Turkey is starting to chill. NATO is starting to get very nervous about Turkey, kicking off something nobody wants to see happen, war with Russia. Now, speaking of Russia, a lot of Russian bashing going on, a lot of propaganda against Russia going on. The Huffington Post ran an article saying Russia appears to deploy forces in Egypt, eyes on Libya roll. And basically citing U.S., Egyptian, and diplomatic sources without naming anybody. They're basically saying Russia is now in Egypt, Russia is now in Egypt, they're going to go into Libya. The Kremlin is saying, no, this is absolutely a fiction. Even Sergei Lavrov is out there saying somebody somewhere is smoking opium, or words to that effect. Now, over in the area off of Korea, a U.S. carrier has now joined the South Korean drills. Being called a drill, it's looking more and more like an outright preparation for a war. They have huge numbers of people over there, major naval force. Our harbor down here is almost empty. They've sent in the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Missile. They're sending in armed attack drones to South Korea to be deployed along the border with North Korea. I can understand if North Korea, looking across that border, is saying, this doesn't look like a drill. It looks like preparations for an actual invasion. And worst of all, we're getting word that U.S. Navy SEALs are practicing to go on in and do a decapitation strike into North Korea, take out its military leadership and its civilian leadership. And that is setting a very dangerous precedent. Now, in the good old days, kings would lead their own forces into battle, and they would take the risk of being killed along with their troops. Then war got civilized, and our rulers sit back home in very comfortable air-conditioned bunkers, and they send other people's children out to be killed and crippled. But they themselves are safe. And there's always been this gentleman's agreement. We're not going to go after your leaders, and your people will not come after our leaders, and we can all kick back and relax, that we are not personally in danger from any of this. Well, if the U.S. goes on out and does a decapitation strike against the leader of any other country, all bets are off. And rulers around the world are going to have to go back to thinking that their own personal lives and safety are now at risk because of this precedent. And again, this doesn't look like a drill. It looks like a preparation to actually invade North Korea for the crime of refusing to do what the United States tells them to do, which seems to be all that is really out there, behind all the usual BS about nuclear bombs and weapons of mass destruction, and he's crazy, and their people are suffering and everything. And I'm not the only person saying so. Article out of Global Research up in Canada saying, is the U.S. preparing for war against North Korea? And at this point, they're saying no more talks with North Korea. And that is a red warning sign that the decision has been made to somehow provoke a war against North Korea. Now, the problem with that is they're going to need to make it look like it's North Korea's fault. Remember when they tried to sink that South Korean ship and blame it on North Korea, and then it turned out the torpedo didn't actually match what the North Koreans were using? Huge embarrassment back then. They may do something like that. They may sink a U.S. ship and claim North Korea did it. They may throw a nuclear weapon toward Hawaii and claim it's from North Korea. They are desperate to get their wars going because without a new world war, the United States is about to collapse. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And apparently Reuters is also running that report from Huffington Post saying that Russia is deploying troops into Egypt, preparing to go into Libya, and Russia's denying it, and who knows what's really going on. Is it a world war yet? It's starting to feel like one. It really is. Now then, the United Nations is out there speaking about Yemen and the blockade, and the Saudis now preparing to capture Yemen's largest single port city. The UN is saying that all of this blockading and all of this war over who gets to run that country has resulted in more than 1,500 children dead over the last 2 years. And, of course, we're already starting to hear from the U.S. corporate media, oh, the suffering children, that's why we have to go into Yemen or Syria or Libya. No, it's because the U.S. is going in to Yemen and Syria and Libya that children are being killed. They sort of have the order a little bit backward, the way Al Gore swapped increasing CO2 and a warming planet in his mockumentary, Inconvenient Truth. Just change the order of the data and you can change the meaning. Yes, going in and starting a war, people are dying. Well, we say people are dying, we have to escalate the war. Horrible. Now then, allowing for inflation, looking up at Afghanistan, which is now the longest single running war in U.S. history. The United States of America, actually you the taxpayer, have spent more money in so-called rebuilding Afghanistan than it spent rebuilding Europe under the Marshall Plan. And it's still under the U.S. puppet ruler, incredibly corrupt. Afghanistan is third from the bottom in the international rankings of corrupt regimes. Only Somalia and North Korea are worse, and I'm not even sure about North Korea given all the propaganda that's out there. The United States has spent $70 billion of your money to rebuild the Afghan security forces, and they're still only in control of 63% of the country. The oil pipeline right-of-way and all those opium poppy fields. Even Hamid Karzai's brother was listed as one of the largest heroin dealers in the country. It's so open there, and again, we have photos at whatreallyhappened.com of coalition forces, including those wearing the U.S. flag shoulder patch, guarding and protecting opium poppy fields and handling those sacks of raw opium. They're calling it perpetual war for perpetual peace, which sounds catchy, but it's nonsense. You either have war or you have peace. If you're waging a war, there is no peace, period, end of discussion. There's a reason Afghanistan was called the graveyard of empires. The last person to actually completely conquer it and hang on to it was Alexander the Great, and he only kept it for 3 years. Now then, back to our favorite military piece of hardware, the F-35, and apparently Britain is already buying these things. They're already, boy, you want to talk about auto manufacturers who are sending cars to the showroom with bad brakes and bad airbags and everything. It's worse with the military-industrial complex. They're already starting to sell F-35s to Great Britain to go for their new aircraft carriers, and the planes have a list of 276 combat failings. In other words, there are 276 problems with the aircraft which would render it unable to engage in combat. And the length of this report on these failings is unprecedented. And basically what it means is the Royal Navy's new aircraft carriers are facing years without the planes they're designed to carry. Great Britain is building aircraft carriers around the F-35, and the F-35s are not usable yet, and they may never be. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with a phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go right to the phone lines now. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I spent some time in Korea as a field-grade military Army officer.
Yes.
And this is 20 years ago, but the configuration of the North Korean Army remains about the same. Back at that time when our Army was about 850,000, about twice what it is now, our active Army, the North Korean Army was configured so that as an equivalent, if every single unit in the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps were converted to artillery units, we still wouldn't have as many artillery tubes as North Korea. Now think about that. If all our infantry, MPs, everything else, everything was armor was converted just to artillery, we wouldn't have, and the Marine Corps, we still wouldn't have as many tubes. And so the very first part is a lot of these things are dug in, very deeply dug in along the 38th parallel, and are within range of artillery range of Seoul. So they could bring down a weight of metal on Seoul conventionally that could kill thousands and thousands of people, and it would take us.
Well, let me do the counter argument here. They may have had all these tubes 20 years ago. Given North Korea's economic difficulties, if those tubes have not been maintained, the question would be how many actual pieces of artillery do they have that could be employed today? Has there been any kind of a force reduction there? And the other issue, of course, is that North Korea was preparing for an invasion from South Korea, but what about their coastal defenses? That's really where they're weak, and that seems to be the vector that the U.S. is drilling to exploit.
Well, I would tell you that we don't, as you've gone over many times, manpower, manufacturing and that whole money thing, that's absolutely true. It doesn't take much to maintain artillery tubes if you don't shoot them much.
Yes.
The ammunition is disposable a little bit, but the barrels do burn out, of course, if you shoot them. But they don't shoot them much, and that's just the way they're configured. And we barely had enough. We really didn't have enough back in 1950 with 5 years out of World War II with all the LSTs and mothball landing craft and division after division of reservists who had many amphibious assaults behind them. We still didn't have enough troops to land in Korea and take the whole thing. So it's just the theater high altitude thing. I don't know how we get out of there without busting. And then, of course, they have nukes. Without busting a couple of nukes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that may be what the thinking is going to be, is not necessarily nuclear weapons, but certainly chemical weapons, deniable biological weapons, something along that line. They may be thinking that way. Again, you're right about the storage of the ammunition. If the propellant for the artillery is not stored correctly, it can become very unstable and very dangerous. That's what actually happened to the USS Iowa. They blamed it on a suicidal gay sailor, but the reality was that the gun propellant for those 16-inch guns had not been stored properly, and it was unstable, and it detonated on ramming.
That's right. It was World War II or Korea-era ammo, and it blew.
Yep.
But at any rate, I just thought I'd let you know, and I can't see any way that the Russians would, from a military point of view, a logistic supportable point of view, and a risk point of view, that they would ever stage through Egypt to go into to Syria.
Well, that's why the SEALs are planning a decapitation strike. They're going to go on in, and they're going to take out North Korea's leadership and then just declare victory and say, all right, we're going to provide you a new government.
I was talking about Egypt, Mike.
I'm sorry.
If Russia, staging through Egypt makes it's a complete falsity. That's not going to happen, because that means they'd have to run the gamut of going through the fleet or overflying Israel, overflying the U.S. ships in the area. That ain't going to happen.
Yeah, there's absolutely no support for the story here. It's just I have a feeling what's going to go on is that Libya has gone on too long. It's turning into another embarrassment like Syria, and the real agenda is to escalate the situation in Libya to put the U.S. puppet regime back in full control and blame the Russians. Oh, the Russians made us do it. They came into Libya. We had to send in, you know, all the fleets and the missiles and the soldiers to clean the Ruskies out of Libya. I think that's what this may be, is an attempt to say the Russians are coming as a justification for military escalation into a country in which we don't really legitimately have any business being in the first place.
Yeah, the devil made me do it.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Putin made me do
Mike,
it.
that's it for me.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? I just wanted to make a comment about North Korea.
Yeah.
I think all this talk about America bombing other countries is pretty much propaganda. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I think it was 4 years ago, she said it herself, that North Korea has a 2 million man ferocious army. And if you're going to use nukes, you got to worry about the prevailing winds going into Beijing or into Japan. It's just propaganda, in my opinion. It's too big of a chore to get into a war with a country like that.
That hasn't stopped the U.S. government. I mean, look at all these quagmires we're stuck in Afghanistan and Iraq, and you know we can't.
Those are countries. Excuse me. Those are countries of tribal nature. We're talking about a country we had a war with them in the 50s and we didn't win. I mean, so it's a long supply line. It's a 2 million man army, and it's pretty tough. It makes for good propaganda. It takes up the media.
Well, I hope you are correct. I hope you are correct. Okay, but at this point, the military-industrial complex.
If I was in the military, I'd drop my gun and run. We'll have a lot of deserters if we get into a war with anybody that wants to shoot back.
Well, what is a deserter going to do? Swim back home across the Pacific? And that is another factor. When you're invading somebody else's country, your soldiers are there for a paycheck and because there's a flag and somebody ordering them, and you're fighting against people who are fighting for their homes and their villages and their families that they can see right there, and that's a tremendous motivator. I certainly hope you are right, but to me it feels like that the elite establishment is thinking that a full-on hot war is going to get the American people to forget all about the crimes and corruption and the abuse and the spying, or at least justify it. They'll get a big bloody war going somewhere, and we the American people will forget all about the corruption and the abuse at the hands of our own government. We'll salute the flag and fling our money and the lives of our children into the war machine, because that's what happened the last 2 times.
Yeah, well, you'll have more casualties in one day in Korea than you had in all the years over in the Middle East. I mean, it's a big deal, man. It's just unbelievably big deal.
I hope you're right, but respectfully, I disagree. And we're going to let you go here and switch over to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day, Michael. Nice to speak with you. Yeah, Michael, first off, we got the USS Ronald Reagan. I don't know if you ever run on a United States aircraft carrier, but we only need one over there probably to wipe out Korea. But as far as Korea goes, the Chinese are not going to let the best customer get shot. They're not. The Chinese will not allow the Koreans to attack us because we're their best customer. That's number one. Number two, actually, I remember 10 years ago they had one of these scandal sheets where the Chinese military is actually saying if we had a first strike and you got rid of 50-60% of our population, the Americans would be doing us a favor.
Okay, Tom. Okay, calm down. I get a sense you had a lot less coffee this morning, but let's go back and take these issues one at a time. China has already sent diplomatic signals that they will not get involved in a war against North Korea on either side, because they do recognize that one of the U.S. agendas in going into North Korea is to try and open up a backdoor to a war with China. The same thinking where Franklin Roosevelt goaded Japan into attacking Hawaii to allow the U.S. to declare war against Nazi Germany, which was in the Axis agreement with Japan at the time. So China has already signaled that they're ready to let North Korea just go its own way and not get involved on this. As far as the USS Ronald Reagan, that's kind of an open issue. Our carriers have not really been in real combat against a serious opponent for decades. They're really good at sailing up to another country that doesn't really have any kind of defenses and flying on in and bombing stuff. But against a nation that might, say, potentially have already bought and acquired the Chinese Silkworm missiles, it may be a different matter. Those carriers are vulnerable. They're old war tech. and they are as out of date in the modern age of smart weapons as the big battleships were at the start of World War II. And we've even had analysts within our own Navy basically say that the carriers are vulnerable. They're very hard to defend against the latest generation of weapons. And more to the point, we need to understand that quite possibly some of these other weapon systems that we're being told are being deployed out there are as faulty as the ones that have already been exposed. The Freedom and Independence class littoral combat ships, the Zumwalt, the F-35, the F-22. We may be dealing with a military that looks really good when it's not actually having to fight somebody, but may in fact be in serious trouble when they go up against a peer.
Michael, let me ask you a question. The Japanese can build stuff very quickly. Do you think the Japanese wouldn't help us take on Korea and wipe them out? Once the Japanese realize that this guy is totally gone rogue and gone nuts, the Japanese will handle the situation, because let me tell you, the Japanese are very
Tom. Okay. First of all, I don't want to be going in there and saying North Korea has gone rogue, because that's exactly the same kind of propaganda that we saw in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq. Oh, Saddam's got weapons of mass destruction. He's just going to launch an attack on Europe in 45 minutes. There is an article on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com, the Grand Deception Revealed, and it's written by somebody who actually has been in North Korea, and says the real reason for all this hostility against North Korea is that North Korea, like Libya, like Yemen, like Syria, like Iraq, do not want to do what the U.S. tells them to do, and that's what this agenda is really all about. Now, Japan is probably going to come on board with the U.S. invasion of North Korea for historical reasons, but again, Japan's resources are limited. Remember, they built most of their World War II weaponry with steel they bought from the United States of America. They don't have a lot of natural resources on those islands because those islands are volcanoes. And like here in Hawaii, there's very little indigenous iron to mine to make for weapons here. So, again, it does look like the U.S. is getting ready to invade North Korea. Ultimately, they can win with weapons of mass destruction. But it's, as that other caller says, it won't be as easy as everybody likes to pretend. The big question is, how is the U.S. government going to make it look like North Korea started this? Because that is an essential part of this process. It's got to be seen as North Korea's fault, rather than yet another unprovoked U.S. aggression.
Michael, your last caller said if we went to war, if the Chinese doesn't reel in North Korea, your last caller just said it. If we nuke North Korea and the radiation's going north into China, you think they're going to want that? No, the Chinese are not going to allow North Korea to start World War III because they don't want to get radiated themselves.
Tom. Okay, hang on a second here. All right. Here we are. First of all, North Korea is not provoking this. We have a lot of propaganda saying this is all the problem of North Korea. It's all North Korea's fault. We got the same song and dance about Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Yemen. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yes, North Korea is testing its missile systems. Wouldn't you, if you saw the United States of America making all this propaganda, making it look like you're on their to-be-invaded list, wouldn't you build your defenses? Wouldn't you test your missiles? And now we're finding out that the reason North Korea has been testing so many missiles is they've had so many failures. And it turns out the failures are because the U.S. has been waging cyber war on North Korea's defensive computer systems and missile systems. So the United States, in a roundabout way, has actually created this situation of multiple missile tests from North Korea. The North Koreans are trying to figure out what's gone wrong. I'm not buying that this is all North Korea's fault. We're seeing too many of the same replays of propaganda that we saw going into Iraq, going into Iran, well, not yet, they're trying to get into Iran, going into all these places. And yes, the U.S. does want a war with China over the South China Sea. or North Korea. It doesn't really matter, because the real objective is a war between the United States Federal Reserve note, the Chinese yuan, and the Russian ruble. That's what's driving all of this. Because if the rest of the world drops using the U.S. dollar for global trade and banking, the Federal Reserve is going to implode immediately. And that is what the U.S. government is willing to send your children to be killed and crippled over a piece of paper with colored ink on it. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Sherry from Fredericksburg, Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, and there was a Nazi military leader during the Nuremberg trials that said the way these countries try to get people to go to war is to incite fear and condemn the pacifists as unpatriotic. And he said it works every time. So I imagine they'll do what they've always done to try to do this. I think they're really going to try. But where I'm really angry is when I hear our radio hosts out there. I don't want to name anyone, of course, because some of them I don't even know. And their hateful, bullying, labeling, ugly speech to us. It's not going to unite people. It's going to incite them in a very unfavorable way and and then that leads to us being set up to turn against each other. And you talk about thinning the herd with the spring storms that are coming up. I know they're target practicing around in my area. I live just outside the city limits. That hill over there is where they practice. It's usually on Sunday, but I've been hearing it during the week.
We're going to have to let you go, Sherry. Thank you for the update on that, and we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take another phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Doing fine.
Nice couple of things. Yeah. One, as far as North Korea goes, I personally think South Korea actually could whip their butt because they've got a lot more to lose, and they've also got an excellent army. The only problem is North Korea has those nukes without the United States even getting involved. The other thing is about what's going on in the Middle East.
Hold it, before you go on the Middle East here, you need to remember in terms of the Koreas, 6 years ago they were talking about reunification the way Germany did. They were going to kiss and make up. They were going to end the armistice. They were going to take up, that minefield along that parallel. And they were talking about being a united Korea again. And then the U.S. got in and started meddling to ramp up the hostilities again. Divide and conquer.
The thing is, this guy, what's his name, Jung, the little fat guy there, he really seems like he's not all there. He really doesn't look like he's got 52 cards in the deck.
Well, that's certainly the portrait being painted of him in our corporate media. But at this point, we can't trust that, can we?
No, but I just go on, kind of looking at the guy. I mean, I'm not the greatest judge of character, but I've worked in jobs where I've dealt with very dysfunctional people, jobs like corrections. And this guy just looks to me like he's not. He really looks to me like he's not all there.
When did you meet him?
I never did meet him. I'm just going.
Okay, you're going on selected, edited video images shown to you by that same corporate media. We cannot trust that. We've seen how the corporate media loves to fake things. They've been caught using morphing technology, green screen. Who knows what they've done to sell this war to you, the American people? I don't think we can trust them. I think if we weren't rattling our sabers on that side of the world, North Korea wouldn't be out there trying to basically say it's going to be ugly if you try and invade us, which is really what it comes down to. And let me ask you one more question before I let you go, because we're almost at station identification. If this is really only a drill being lined up along the Koreas, why did they have it all the way over there and spend all that money to bring all that U.S. hardware all across the Pacific Ocean? That cost a lot of money in terms of fuel, supplies, food. Normally, drills are run closer to home. And it's obviously very threatening, and it's very provocative. And I think North Korea would be justified in thinking that there's a very real risk this is going to turn into an outright invasion.
I will tell you this, though. Donald Trump wants a successful president, he better start forgetting about all these wars, including getting bogged down in the Middle East. You know what cost the Soviet Union, really was last straw for the Soviet Union was Afghanistan. Being involved, getting stuck in Afghanistan.
That was the beginning. That was the beginning of the end, as well as the Soviet Union bankrupting its own economy, trying to match the U.S. Strategic Defense Initiative. As it turned out, the U.S. was never able to get the Strategic Defense Initiative to work anyway, but the Soviet Union bankrupted themselves trying to match it. All right, Mark, we got to let you go here. We'll be back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to do some news before we take any more phone calls here, and this just gets better and better and better. Earlier we were talking about this list of fake news websites being promoted by Harvard University, and it turned out that the list did not originate with Harvard University. It originated with an associate professor at Merrimack College in Massachusetts, and she's hardcore liberal, Hillary supporter. Her educational focus is social justice. She's a social justice associate professor or assistant professor. And it turns out Merrimack College itself, which is a hub of liberal hatred and totalitarian censorship, is such a poor college academically. Their business school failed to be accredited. Their business school does not have accreditation, and according to this article I'm looking at Natural News, graduates from Merrimack College are finding their degree is worthless. There are no academic standards there. If you have a degree from that college, you can hang it on the wall and say, I'm a college graduate, but nobody who's actually hiring for jobs that require skills, especially in science and technology, they're looking at these diplomas as an absolute joke. All an illusion. Now, getting on back to business and the economy. Pro-European Union politicians are starting to realize just how harmful the anti-Russia agenda is to their own interests. And this is in response to the story that came out yesterday that the European Union has extended for another 6 months its sanctions against Russian individuals and organizations over their alleged role in the Ukrainian crisis, forgetting that the coup d'etat and overthrow of Yanukovych and the installation of Poroshenko was a U.S. operation. And the EU has dug in its heels. It's on this, we're going to get Russia no matter what. And politicians in the various EU member states are realizing this is harming the EU. And that, in turn, is harming their own political fortunes, because their farmers are coming up and saying, look, we used to sell our product to Russia. We're going bankrupt here. We're starving here. What are you going to do? And because of the way the EU was set up, the politicians in the EU member states have no power and authority to change anything. So up in Brussels, they're out there stamping their feet and saying, we're going to stand firm against Russia, and yes, our farmers are going bankrupt, and they're all going out of business, but that's a sacrifice we are willing to make for what we see is the greater good. Now, the numbers are not good here. It's very obvious that our stock market is, in fact, being rigged. It's way overvalued, dangerously overvalued. And everybody is saying, we don't know when it's going to fail. It's hard to figure out. And the reason is because there are so many underhanded things being done to keep the economy looking like it's still functioning. But it actually quit working as a real economy a while ago. And it's all being papered over with instant money pouring out of that Federal Reserve here. Now, the Treasury, of course, is already urging Congress to raise the U.S. debt limit to avoid a default. Officially, tomorrow is when the Treasury runs out of money. And so far, we're not seeing a whole heck of a lot of that being reported on the corporate media, whether there's going to be a big fight or if Congress is going to yield to the inevitable and go ahead and raise the debt limit. And, of course, the liberal Democrats, oddly enough, the ones who love to tax and spend, they're opposing a raising of the debt limit because that would give Trump the room he needs to start implementing his infrastructure policy. And they don't want that to happen. They want to cut off the flow of cash to Donald Trump in order to hamstring him And for that reason, they want the debt ceiling to remain where it is. Now, GOP is still in charge of Congress right now, so it may be a faux effort. Meanwhile, down in Venezuela, which is a predictor of what is going to happen here in the United States of America, their inflation has jumped 741%. At this point, a total collapse of their currency is inevitable. They are a victim of U.S. economic warfare, U.S. attempts at coup d'etat and overthrow because they dared to sell their oil for currencies other than the U.S. dollar. You're not allowed to do that. All natural resources are traded for the U.S. dollar so that anybody who needs those resources has to come to the United States and borrow those dollars at interest. The private central bankers must have their piece of the action. We'll send the enforcers out. We'll send the button men, the mechanics, the Navy, the Army, the Marines. Do something bad to you if you don't give the Federal Reserve a piece of the action. Now, Toshiba is apparently moving forward. They're looking seriously at a bankruptcy plan for their troubled U.S. nuclear affiliate, Westinghouse Electric. And that may be in part because of the backlash to the Fukushima disaster, which has resulted in a lot of countries that were considering nuclear power plants are now pulling back from those plans. And so anybody who is building nuclear reactors right now is in serious, serious trouble. Remember Snapchat? Their IPO was up there, valued incredibly, incredibly high. According to CalPERS, they're now saying the shares should be considered junk equity. One of the biggest fails on the stock market. Huge IPO, we're all going to be rich. And the investors said, no, we don't think so. We've been suckered enough. Another scandal that still needs to be looked at, Barack Obama stole $260 billion with a B from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac investors for the Obamacare bail-ins. Remember, Congress wouldn't pass that money for the bail-ins for Obamacare, so Obama just basically took the money from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and he did not actually have the legal authority to do so. All right, we're going to grab some more phone calls. Kevin in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Mike, how are you in Bizarro World?
Well, please clarify.
Yes. Well, I just think we live in a Bizarro world. You know, what's upside down is right, and what's right is upside down.
True.
I have a couple questions for you. I've been reading about this health care and everything, and under Obamacare, I have a pre-existing medical condition. I have what's called retinitis pigmentosa. I'm losing my eyesight.
Yes.
And under Obamacare, you know, I would be called no longer useful for the state and probably be euthanized. Under this Obamacare light, am I still facing the same consequence, I guess, for my eye disease?
My understanding is that the reforms to the new health care package, and they're not calling it Obamacare Light anymore, and they're not calling it Trump Care either. It's just health care reform. They are making provision for pre-existing conditions because of the way people with pre-existing conditions were shortchanged in Obamacare, where people, you know, Obama's out there saying if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, and people with pre-existing conditions were keeping their plan, and all of a sudden the plans got canceled. And they got an Obamacare compliant plan, and it said we're disallowing your pre-existing condition. So that is where people like you really got screwed on that. And what we're hearing is that the new plan will, in fact, make allowance or adjustments for people with pre-existing conditions who previously had insurance for those conditions. But in the end, you know, they're talking about this possibly coming up for a vote next week, and they've spent a great deal of time in the corporate media. But in the end, I'm not expecting that this is going to work, because nobody is really addressing the true problem with American health care, which is its extraordinarily high cost and its very poor quality, and the focus on chronic treatment of symptoms perpetually versus actually finding a cure that returns healthy working people to the workforce.
Yeah, I understand 100%. You know, there is no cure for my disease or a treatment. I also wanted to point your attention. I have a video on YouTube, and the video is named a personal message to Hillary Scumbag Clinton. I think you ought to check it out and maybe post it to your website.
All right, I'll take a look for it.
You want the YouTube channel?
If I just a YouTube search for Hillary Scumbag, I should find it, right?
I think you should. My name is Kevin Ballum. If you're looking, it's my name. It is my channel name.
All right, I'll look for that after the radio show today, okay?
All right, thank you, sir. You have a great day.
Same to you, and we're going to switch over to Dan in Washington State. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking the call. About North Korea, do you think, I kind of missed what you said about the money system, but to me it all seems pretty staged. It seems like if you look at Vietnam and Korea, it's kind of like we have a backroom deal with China just to take out any of its competitor. I don't know, the whole thing just seems so fake to me that we're friends with China, you know, and exporting our jobs there and have this huge deficit, and then they supply Korea, and then we're supposed to pretend like Korea's our enemy, but ignore China's influence on Korea.
Well, again, China has sent diplomatic messages that in the event of a war involving North Korea, they're going to be disinterested, and as a matter of fact, obviously North Korea did not improve situations with I think it was a steel embargo or that just hit, I think, about a week or 2 weeks ago. But China does not want a war with the United States of America, and they've sent the diplomatic signals they're not going to get involved in such a war on North Korea's side. I think what they will do is try and say we are neutral in all of this to continue to do business with as many people as they can around the world.
Well, I hope so. One reason I voted for Trump is he was one of the only ones smart enough to say, you know, China has a lot of control and, you know, let China take care of North Korea. And it seemed like if we would put pressure, like a tariff on toys or something would have a bigger impact.
Well, you know, what you've just pointed out is another area where I keep saying the problem with President Trump is that he is as dangerously naive going into the White House as Jimmy Carter was. Too much of Donald Trump's worldview is still based on what he was getting from corporate media, even though he is now aware of the extent to which corporate media lies. Because the issue was not about letting China take care of North Korea. The agenda was always finding a way for the U.S. to get into North Korea and replace this very impudent, independent North Korean government with another U.S. puppet regime.
Well, okay, I guess we'll all stay tuned and see what happens. I think it just seems like we're kind of the military arm of this New World Order. I mean, China just sits back and,
absolutely.
You know, I mean, but anyway, thanks a lot for taking the call.
Yep, NATO is the enforcer of the New World Order in Europe, and the United States is the enforcer of the New World Order over on this side of the planet here. Now, let's talk about immigration, refugees, and so forth and so on. Thousands are fleeing Bulgarian refugee camps trying to get into Western Europe. So far, 3,500 since the start of this year. The problem is not going away. Meanwhile, over in Great Britain, an Albanian asylum seeker has been found guilty of murdering these very old British people, pensioners. And he tried to hide the pensioner's body in a tarpaulin in a water-filled ditch. He actually confessed to one of his friends that he had done this. When he got arrested and taken into court, he tried to claim it was mistaken identity. All of us Albanians look alike, but he has been found guilty. And again, when you have this migration process, it's acting as a filter. You are not getting the very best of the people from those source countries. You're getting the people who couldn't make it in the source countries. You're getting people who are fleeing prosecution for crimes they've committed. You're getting people who are carrying contagious diseases. You're getting people who couldn't make it in their own countries coming on in. Now, getting on back to the Netherlands, there's been a big debate between Mark Rutte and Geert Wilders, in which Wilders basically declared Rutte that Erdogan's hostage. It's time to close the borders. And, of course, the current Dutch Prime Minister is very much on board with Angela Merkel and the globalists and the open borders. And even though it's just precipitated a tremendous disaster, but the globalists don't care. They're looking at it as a period of adjustment. we're going to drop the borders and blur everyone together, and yes, there's going to be rapes and murders, and there's going to be crime and drugs, and we're reintroducing diseases into parts of the world where they'd previously been eradicated, and we're probably going to see some epidemics, but it's a small price to pay for that dream of a one-world government and a human race enslaved to a global private central bank in perpetuity. That's what they dream of when they go to bed at night. Meanwhile, over in Naples, where they're having violent protests by the anti-immigrant, anti-Euro Northern League leader, riot police have been deployed against them with tear gas and water cannons saying, "You will accept the new world order! You will accept the new world order!" Breaking out into the open here. Alrighty, we're going to go to the phones. Bruce in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, aloha, Michael. I just got a few quick points. I just want to reinforce what you're saying about being suspicious of anything that comes from the mainstream media. For the tendency to create footage, to manipulate images,
okay, Bruce, we got a really bad phone connection. I cannot understand what you are saying, but thank you for calling on in. We're going to let you go, and no more calls about North Korea because we got other things we got to cover for the rest of the show. Okay, so that's going to be that here. Getting on back to immigration, this is a very, very sad story. And apparently, there was this illegal alien, Armando Garcia Ramirez of Mexico. He was arrested inside Texas in 2011, but was released. Then he was arrested again in April of last year and again released, and he just shot and killed a 15-year-old girl who was carrying his unborn child in San Antonio. These are the things that we have to look at as the true cost of this liberal open borders policy. They're perfectly okay with a 15-year-old girl getting knocked up and then murdered. Small price to pay for the dream of a global government here. Now, a little bit of embarrassment. Apparently, a group of Turkish demonstrators were protesting against the government of the Netherlands over the Netherlands tamping down all of these Turkish political rallies trying to win this upcoming referendum for Erdogan, and they decided they were going to burn the Dutch flag on live streaming TV. Unfortunately, they got a little confused. They actually had a French flag, and now everybody is laughing at them over that. So now we're getting word that a Soros-funded think tank is out there trying to disconnect George Soros and the New World Order from all of this crime going on in Europe. And they're now claiming that Russia and Syria are deliberately sending rapist migrants into Europe to influence the election against Angela Merkel. They're really getting desperate in terms of the propaganda. In fact, at this point, it almost sounds like they're writing some of this stuff with a dartboard. You know, Russia and Syria are sending rapists into Europe to support certain politicians. That's it. That's the headline news, boys. Get it out there. It really is just out there. You have to just scratch your head and say, what are these people on? They're probably on prescription antidepressants. That explains a lot, doesn't it? Now, here's the difference between the United States and Europe versus Russia. Putin does allow immigration. And Putin is telling immigrants coming on into Russia, you will respect Russia's laws, traditions, and culture. Remember who else said that? President Theodore Roosevelt said virtually the same thing. You are welcome to come in here as long as you recognize this is not your home country. And we do things a little differently here. And you will obey our laws. You will respect our traditions and our customs. You will speak our language. This is why Putin is being seen around the world as a global statesman in this day and age. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, getting on over to the Brexit, a lot of things happening very, very quickly there. Huge debate in the House of Lords, got very, very ugly. As you know, the rules for Parliament are very different from the rules for the U.S. Congress. Congress maintains a certain decorum. Parliament can get really rowdy. Actually, a lot of entertainment value watching those speeches over there. And apparently one of the House of Lords peers has compared Brexit to Hitler, which is kind of a stretch, and actually criticized Prime Minister Theresa May for obeying the will of the people. How can you even do that? We're the Lords. And then you wonder why there's talk of a new referendum to see if maybe the House of Lords ought to be gotten rid of. Well, despite all the hysterics and the Hitler allegations and all the rest of it, the House of Lords did pass the EU divorce bill. And there's now no further obstacle to Theresa May triggering Article 50. The Queen has said she will sign the law. And so right now, it looks like Great Britain will leave the European Union formally by the end of this month. Remember when the Brexit vote happened and they said, oh, it'll be years getting untangled. Nope, going to happen right darn soon here. All righty, let's take some phone calls. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Not much, Michael. I wish we could get a Washington, D.C. exit to get those people out of this country because they are wicked evil. Well, it's like the system. The system it's horrible. Anyone that's for peace in this country, you can count on them being dead or having blankets thrown over their mouths.
Well, you know, I mean, that's the real danger in this Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton effort to kick Trump out of the White House, because by doing so, it's going to be inescapable for the American people to realize that the American people are no longer in control of this nation. And that is not going to sit well with a lot of people. Because we're going to see that, you know, a man who was elected by the American people and the establishment gangs up on him and kicks him out, the establishment might as well say, we're declaring war on you, the American people. And the American people, for the most part, are going to stand up and say, all right, if you want a war.
Yeah, I actually think that if they do that, like basically what you're saying, is that I think that will be the end of our government. I mean, either that or, as I was saying the other day, there will be mass slavery. But I think that Trump, unfortunately, he's going along with some of the bull crap, maybe because his family and he was threatened, their lives were threatened. But I do think that he's more popular than what we believe right now.
Well, again, we can't trust anything coming out of the corporate media or any of the liberal politicians, and even some of the GOP politicians. We simply cannot listen to them anymore because it's just all a tsunami of lies, fraud, and deception going on here. Now, as far as enslavement of the American people, we're already slaves. We have been slaves to the private central bank for over 100 years. We're not allowed to see that we're slaves. As we rattle our slave chains every April, you know, we're told to stand up and proclaim that we're free, we're free. Look how shiny my chains are. But what's really going on here with this establishment attempt to eject the People's Choice of President is they're on the verge of rendering the government as illegitimate, totally illegitimate, in the eyes of the American people. Now, for those of us who've been paying attention for a long time, we already understand this is not a legal, legitimate, constitutional government of this country. When the vast majority of the American people come to that same conclusion, the party is over. And they're not going to be able to forcibly enslave us because there are too many of us and not enough of them. Did you ever see this little cartoon called The Tiny Dot? I'm going to, over the commercial break, I'm going to find it. I'm going to put it back up on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. You need to look at this little cartoon, The Tiny Dot, and you need to forward it to everybody that you know. Okay?
That's right. Hey, and all wars are BS. we don't need to get involved in any war, and we need to let Trump know we know they're BS for the bank.
Absolutely. All right, got to let you go here. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And over at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and they have been doing steadfast work on 9/11. Now, I don't like to spend a lot of time on 9/11 because it is, frankly, getting back there. But every once in a while, something new comes on out and makes it current and relevant yet again. And AE 9/11 Truth has come out with a new video, Stand for the Truth, a government researcher speaks out. And this video features a former NIST employee, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, that came out with a report on the collapse of World Trade Center Building Number 7 that, frankly, a lot of people thought was nonsense. And he gives the inside story about how, yes, this was a government whitewash. The report was simply propaganda under the imprimatur of a U.S. government agency, but then that's probably true of all government reports. Lies, fraud, and deception. But you should believe it, it's got the U.S. government seal of approval on there. Now then. Speaking for government, I love stories like this. It's not even my state. Over in Virginia, former Mayor R. Scott Silverthorne got caught in a sting in which he used an online chat room to solicit other men that he promised he would trade them drugs for sex. And the judge has ordered him held in jail until his sentencing in June. And, of course, he's had to resign from his mayorship. A lot of this do as we say, don't do as we do behavior in politicians. Have you ever noticed that? It's amazing. Now, political correctness is really getting out of control. And apparently there is this school in Iowa, high school in Iowa, and it's basketball season, and they went on out to play this basketball game. And their uniforms, their athletic uniforms, are red, white, and blue. And it created a firestorm where this school and these students were called racist for wearing red, white, and blue. Just the colors. Wasn't an American flag or anything, but just red, white, and blue. Oh, it's racist. It's insensitive. It hurts the feelings of the illegal immigrants and the refugees. So you remember back when they tried to ban the Confederate flag and they succeeded? Now they're coming for anything that is red, white, and blue. Has to be erased. Erase your identity. Erase your history. Erase your culture. Prepare you for the new world order in which you will have no idea who you are other than what the new world order tells you. You are an Eloi. And you will do what the Morlocks tell you to do. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, you need to go on back and read H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. And by the way, as is always the case, the book is much better than the movies. Some of the movies have been pretty good. I love the George Pal one. And when Cosmos was being produced, they actually found the original time machine from the George Pal movie and refurbished it and used it for Carl Sagan for some of the segments of the Cosmos, which has been re-released with new computer animation. It really looks good, and it's a good series. I actually do like it. Over in Illinois, as crime continues to soar in Chicago, they're looking at a new bill that would allow the police to confiscate the guns of any Illinois citizen based on a friend or a relative or even a police officer saying, I think that person might be dangerous. That's the new benchmark in Illinois. We found somebody in the state who thinks you might be a danger with that gun, therefore we're going to take your gun. Now, of course, this is not going to affect the thousands of criminals in Chicago who are not going to give up their guns. And I want to respond to this with three Quotes, laws that forbid the carrying of arms disarm only those who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. Such laws make things worse for the assaulted and better for the assailants. They serve rather to encourage than to prevent homicides, for an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed man. Thomas Jefferson in his book, Commonplace Book. If circumstances should at any time oblige the government to form an army of any magnitude, that army can never be formidable to the liberties of the people while there's a large body of citizens, little if at all inferior to them in discipline and the use of arms, who stand ready to defend their rights and those of their fellow citizens. Alexander Hamilton. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution, and that was Abraham Lincoln. And we are certainly in the midst of men and women who want to pervert our Constitution and think it is their divine right to do so. Now then, this brings us to a story that is relevant to our guest in the third hour of tomorrow's show. Apparently, NBC decided to do a gun grabber story, and they sent undercover people to these companies that produce what are called the 80% gun kits. And they bought a kit from guns80.com, and they had it shipped to a different address, and then they broke the story saying, I could just walk into one of these stores, and I could just have this gun mailed to another individual who built the gun in just a couple of hours. And the part they're not telling you is that the person the gun kit was sent to was a former ATF agent, Rick Vasquez, in Virginia, who has the training and the machine tools to put together a weapon. The part they left out is that you have to machine out that low receiver. And that is not easy. Somebody sent me one almost a year ago, and I still haven't finished it, although I will grant it's a low priority, and I don't really have a lot of time for hobbies these days. But it's not as easy as NBC is trying to make it out. It's just a gun-grabber piece of propaganda from the Nothing But Crap News Network. And here is the important part. Criminals do not use large guns to commit crimes. They're too obvious. You're walking down there the street with an AR-15 style gun, people are going to notice. Criminals prefer small, tiny, concealable, disposable handguns. And criminals do not waste time building their own guns. They steal them from law-abiding citizens, gun stores, the occasional police car, or they get them from Fast and Furious or other gun smugglers. But they're trying to basically get a law passed making it illegal to make your own guns. And they won't stop with the AR-15s. They'll go for the black powder people. And I know that because many, many, many years ago, when I lived in Southern California, and building black powder guns was a hobby I had back then, and I really enjoyed it. I remember being at a store that I did a lot of business with, and there was somebody there from the BATF trying to get the sales records of people who were buying black powder guns, and to their credit, the owner of the store said, no, you've got no legal authority. Black powder guns are not subject to registration. And the reason is very simple. Most black powder guns are shooting patched round ball. There's no ballistic test that can link a patched round ball back to a specific gun. So black powder guns, you don't need to register them. Some states you have to have a permit to own and fire them. But the ATF agent came on out and said, one of these days we'll get around you. So we know it's been in the agenda. They're scared of the American people. Nothing that they're doing is going to stop crime and terror. It's all about protecting the elite establishment from an enraged American people. And again, I'm not encouraging people to actually do that. I'm convinced if we just wait long enough, this government is about to self-destruct the way the Soviet Union did. But I do like guns. I like punching holes in paper. I have in the past put food on the table with a gun. I've chased varmints out of my family's farm fields with a gun. What we had back then was very simple. On your 12th birthday, you got your first gun. And you got that lecture on gun safety, which was the second religion where I grew up. And the first time you mishandled that gun, you would get a trip to the woodshed, would have you eating your dinner standing up for a week. We didn't have mass shootings. We took our guns to school. We left them in the cloakroom because on the way home, we'd be stopping by the farm fields to chase the varmints out. That was accepted behavior. Nobody got killed. In all the years I lived in that town, there was only one incident with a firearm, and that was a botched suicide. That was it. People were not shooting each other. We got along just fine. Go into a gun store. Look how polite and respectful everybody is. And then compare it with the videos of Black Friday shopping riots at the malls where people are beating each other to death to get a TV set. It's amazing. All right, we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip on down here to another section here because it's time for us to talk about human-caused global warming. Insert ominous music here. So we have this nor'easter that has basically shut down travel, and they're looking at blizzard conditions in at least 8 states. 2 feet of snow in a lot of areas, 31 inches in Walton, New York, just 1 week before spring break season starts. New York has declared a state of emergency. They're closing all the schools ahead of this storm coming on in, because it's going to be a bad one, today and tomorrow. I got a lot of pictures from my family living in the area. Apparently over in Wisconsin, the Merrimack Ferry has had to suspend service. The river has frozen over again. And a freeze warning has been issued for farmers in South Carolina in what's called the T&D region. They're even saying that the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C., which is kind of an annual thing, the blooming of the cherry blossoms from all those cherry trees that were gifts from Japan all those years ago, those blossoms may be destroyed by all of this. Snow blanket Chicago area, more coming on Tuesday. It's really hitting Massachusetts, snow falling across southeastern North Carolina. There was this amazing photo, a lakeside New York holiday home totally encased in ice from a freezing cold windstorm. The water was blowing off the lake. As soon as it hit the side of the house, it froze solid. It's just a solid cake of ice there. And I hope the home is still good inside of there. And of course, what are we getting from the corporate media? Oh, it was the hottest year on record. NOAA said so. Absolutely. Boy, do you remember all the way back in March of 2000, and the corporate media was telling you that because of human-caused global warming, snowfalls are now a thing of the past. They actually said that. Headline, UK Independent, March 20th, 2000. They've taken it off their website now, of course. But in the age of the Internet, that doesn't mean anything at all, except that we catch you trying to remove the propaganda after the fact. Out in California, where they have Proposition 65 passed, this was a voter initiative that requires the state's governor to have a publicized list of chemicals known to cause cancer. And of course, because the World Health Organization has declared glyphosate a probable carcinogen, California is required by law to put it on that list. Monsanto went to court trying to block California from adding glyphosate to that list. It's not fair. It'll hurt our business. We'll lose profits. Who cares if those people get cancer? That'll help the cancer industry. And to their credit, amazingly, considering how liberal and wacko California can be, the judge tossed it out. Fresno County Superior Court Judge Christy Culver Capitan ruled against Monsanto and said, yes, glyphosate is now on California's official list of things that will give you cancer. Now, getting onto the realm of computer and computer security, you're going to love this one. Everybody's out there trying to say Russia hacked the DNC emails, Russia hacked the election, Russia hacked CIA and gave this stuff to WikiLeaks and all the rest of it. In some cases, people don't need to hack anything. This is an absolutely amazing story coming out of ZDNet. Apparently over at the U.S. Air Force, somebody was able to obtain highly sensitive personnel files on senior, high-ranking officers, including the passwords they used on Air Force computer systems. because it turned out there was an internet-connected backup drive doing automated backups that didn't even have a password on it. You couldn't get into the Air Force computer, but you could get into the backup volume, and everything was there. Just amazing. Okay, we're going to take a quick phone call from Tom in Utah. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, in that Hollywood technique you used on me yesterday, you actually provoked the listeners, some of your dedicated listeners. I got a call from two families up there in the path of that storm that you're talking about, and they realized they were at risk of the poisoning that I identified.
Okay. All right, well, glad it worked out. We got a break for commercial, and thank you very much. Okay. All right, there we are. Now then, American citizens, U.S. border agents can search your cell phone, and apparently the concern is that a New York couple returning to the U.S. from a trip to Toronto, and even though they were American citizens, they were stopped and they were held for 2 hours while their cell phones were searched. The border agents demanded their passwords, which I think is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. And you know something? Years ago, when I was going over to Canada during my computer animation work, it was always so weird. I'd go from the U.S. into Canada, and it was always, hi, welcome, hope you like Canada, here's a tourist map and resources for you. Coming back into the United States, my own country, it was get up against the wall, we're going to frisk you. What were you doing in Canada? What business you got? Even back then, they were acting like Nazis. We're seeing a lot of videos that are going up on how many layers of aluminum foil it takes to block a cell phone. If you need temporary isolation from the grid, be very careful your phone does not overheat on that one. And another one that was out there, how to stop the cell phone's GPS tracking, because that's going all the time and keeping a record of every place you go. The important point on all of this I will share with you when we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we were talking about all these little videos that are starting to surface on YouTube on how to temporarily cut off communication to your cell phone from the cell towers or from GPS, either one of which can show your location or shut off the camera and microphone that's spying on you because maybe on your way home from work you want to stop off at the adult bookstore or something, and you really don't feel like having the government know that you did that. Here's the important point. Real criminals and terrorists already know all this stuff. Wrapping a cell phone in aluminum foil to cut the signal off, because you can't take the batteries out anymore and they're never truly off. It's like we demonstrated with encryption. Real criminals and real terrorists can devise systems of encryption the NSA cannot break. So all this spying on the cell phones has nothing to do with crime and terror, and it's all about a government that is out of their minds terrified that you, the American people, are waking up to what's really been going on. And they're trying to find some way they can keep you under control. It's not really working. Now, here's a story that's just now coming on in. Apparently, Trey Gowdy is gearing up for the House Intelligence Committee investigation into claims of Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election. And so far, nobody has found anything at all. The Kremlin is now saying that, yes, they met with representatives of Trump's transition team. They've been meeting with representatives of Hillary's campaign. That's part of the preparation for the job that candidates who think they've got a chance of winning are going to go through. It's normal. It's not a big stink and scandal. And here is where it gets interesting. Trey Gowdy has said FBI Director James Comey will not receive special treatment. By virtue of making that statement, Gowdy is telegraphing that he thinks all of this nonsense about Russia tinkering with the election was just a big, steaming pile of USDA choice bovine excrement, and he's going to find out whose hands were on that pitchfork. And that is significant here. Now, getting on back to computers, apparently later this month there's going to be a new facial recognition app available for smartphones called FaceZam. where you can take a picture of somebody in front of you, and this app will scan all of the Facebook profile pictures to identify this person to you. It's not exactly perfect. It's scoring a 70% accuracy in its current version, but it would certainly make it very, very difficult for anonymous people to stalk you because of your political views. And so I think that is probably something I'm going to be getting for my smartphone as well. Apparently more and more people are discovering that smartphones are actually arriving from their stores with malware already installed. It's a huge, huge problem. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do this afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Our third hour guest will be Joe Moulton of Guns80.com, talking about the media attack on our gun rights. Please share what you know with everyone that you know, social media, emails, and the rest of it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.